The cool thing about camping is there's a million different ways you can do it. But when it comes to something like your camp kitchen box, there are a few things that I recommend having with you all the time. So in this video, I'm gonna break down exactly what I keep in my camp kitchen box and why, as well as a few things that I take sometimes versus not, and when and why I take those. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, make sure you stick around to the end, because there are a couple things that I'll throw in there right towards the end that are a little unconventional. So stick around till then. But I am Meander and Mitch, and I have an outdoor community that lets me camp with people from all different backgrounds and budgets. And because of that, I get to see quite a few different camp kitchens and different kits that people put together. But this is the one that I've developed myself and have kind of taken from different people. It just works for me. So this is not necessarily all inclusive depending on your style, but it works for me and it might work for you. Let's get into it. Now, the first thing we can talk about is the box itself. Now, this is just a normal Sterilite container. It does have some locking little latches to help keep everything closed. It's nothing special, but it definitely works for what I need it to do. The only thing I recommend is it has to be heavy duty enough so that your stuff, like rocking around in the back if you're driving around, it doesn't punch through it. So I had a little plastic one, probably about half the size of this at one point, and I stopped a little too hard one time and the stuff in it just kind of shifted in a way that cracked it. So you definitely want it to be heavy duty enough to hold the stuff that's in it, but it doesn't have to be anything special. It can be fancy, it can be basic, anything in between. The most important thing is that it fits the stuff that you need in it. So start with a camp box. That's a great way to build a camp kitchen box. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about that is not something I take on all of my trips, but it's something that is quickly becoming one of my go-to ways to cook, is this little foldable grate thing here. So I got this at Walmart. I think it's like 12 bucks. I think it's actually used for s'mores, but I cook a bunch of stuff in here. I cook steaks in it. I cook pork chops in it. I've cooked a lot of different things using this exact thing. And it's just something where if you are gonna have a fire and you're gonna be outside and you don't wanna use your stove, this gives you a great way to cook something where, yeah, if it's gonna be a steak, you're gonna be holding it over the fire for a good period of time and continuously like flipping it over. But it definitely gets the job done, and it allows you to have the most control over like how close to the fire it is. Something like a tripod or something along those lines might be similar, but in my opinion, it's easier just to move this with your hands than to try to constantly readjust the tripod. So something that I don't always take, but is quickly becoming one of my go-to ways to cook stuff. So that's this. Okay, the next thing is something that I take on every trip. And it's not necessarily this exact one, but it is a stove of some kind. So this is actually a Fire Maple Saturn X stove burner. It is my favorite single burner that I have. And the only other thing that sometimes I switch it out for is the Coleman double burner. And that really just depends on what I'm gonna be doing and how many people I'm gonna be trying to cook for. So if I'm just cooking for myself or one other person, this is my go-to. It's really easy to just use one pot or pan and cook whatever you're gonna cook in it. But if you know you're gonna want different things to have different things cooking at the same time, then a two burner is gonna be the way to go. Again, with this, there's a ton of different options. You don't necessarily have to get the Saturn X stove here or the Coleman double burner, but those are the two I use. They've not let me down yet, knock on wood, and it's tough to beat. This is a really high quality burner, and I think they still come in at about 100 bucks. The Coleman is 60 bucks last I checked. You can get some cheaper. Some of the ones I've seen that are cheaper haven't worked as well or have been kind of hit or miss or finicky. But these two in particular have been solid for me every time I've used them. So that's what I recommend, a stove of some kind. Also really nice, this comes in a package, and you can just throw this in and it keeps everything together. Obviously you have to let it cool off before you can put it back in here, but I don't really think that's a big deal. You gotta let literally any of them cool off. So, little box. Okay, so I mentioned only using one pot or pan, and 90% of the time, all I take is one pan from my kitchen, and it's nothing special. It was definitely not a camping pan at all. It's just what I use it for, and it gets the job done, does everything I need it to do, and I really don't care about it if it gets messed up. So grab a pot or a pan, whatever you want to use more often, and throw it in your bin. I like to have one dedicated for camping. You don't necessarily have to do that. You can just take them back and forth, but these are you can get pretty solid pans pretty cheap. So grab one, throw it in your bin. That way it's dedicated to that. You don't have to worry about it and you don't have to forget it. It does kind of put a damper on a trip when you get there and you're ready to cook your food that you planned out, and all of a sudden you don't have a way to cook it. So it makes you pivot and you learn how to adjust, but it could be easier. Just get a pan just for camping. All right, we're gonna go into our next one. Sorry about the drastic change. It was getting a little dark in the camera screen there, so I figured I should probably turn on some lights. It's getting way darker than I anticipated, way quicker. So little adjustment, but this should be better to watch. So let's jump into the next item. So at this point, I am literally just gonna keep reaching into this box and grabbing the next thing. So this is in no particular order. But the thing that I do probably use the next most, actually maybe even more than both of these, depending on what I'm cooking for the weekend, is aluminum foil. I always just keep a roll of aluminum foil in my bin at all times. You'd be surprised how many different uses you can use this for, especially obviously with cooking. But you can wrap a lot of stuff that's frozen or just refrigerated just in this, throw it on the coals, and it keeps it, or it cooks it pretty well. Sometimes you don't even have to wrap it, you can just throw it straight on the coals, but I just don't like doing that. So I wrap it in foil. I use this for like chimichangas a lot. Hack, Aldi's has frozen chimichangas for like $8 for 8 of them. Wrap them in this, throw them on the fire or in a pan, cook them up. They are amazing. So depending on what you're cooking, foil might come in handy, but regardless, it's a good thing to keep in your bin just in case you need it for whatever you might encounter. So foil. Also very dependent on what you're going to be cooking, but I like to have olive oil in my bin at all times. I keep saying at all times. This is an at all times video, so I'm probably going to keep saying it, but we'll see. But no, yeah, olive oil I keep in there. It can be in handy for a lot of different recipes. So maybe you're cooking something and you don't want to crisp up as fast. This is great to use for that, obviously. Or if you just want to keep your pan a little cleaner and not have as much stuff stuck on it, this can help. So it doesn't necessarily have to be olive oil. You could also have clarified butter or maybe a tallow of some kind, but having something in there to keep your stuff non-stick and to just keep stuff from crisping up a little too fast is, in my opinion, pretty important. So olive oil for me, but there are other options. While we're talking about the food that we're cooking, more of the stuff that I bring with me is just this bag of all the different salts and spices and stuff. The 3 main things that I use almost every time is salt, pepper, and garlic powder. In addition to those, I have rosemary, red pepper flakes, onion powder. I think I have cayenne pepper in there, and I think that's it. I always go for the grinders. You don't have to, but I like grinded salt and pepper a lot better than normal. I feel like I taste the difference. Maybe I don't, maybe I'm crazy, but it's like 50 cents more for the grinder and I think it's better. So I get that, keep it in here. Again, all of this stuff is stuff you can just grab from your kitchen if you don't want to have dedicated, or you could just go to Aldi's and all of these spices are like 50 to 99 cents each, and you can just make a little bag for less than $5 and your food will taste a lot better. Again, depends on what you like to cook and the different things you're going to cook. If you're not going to cook anything from scratch, you might not need this, but I do, so I bring it. So that was in a Ziploc bag. So the next thing I reached in and grabbed was extra Ziploc bags. I was actually very surprised at how often these came in handy. Whether you use it for dirty things to keep them from getting everything else dirty, or if you just want to separate stuff like your spices, they come in handy, and I just keep a little roll of them. I like the bigger ones with the actual zips, but I'll keep a handful of them in the box, and again, you'd be surprised how often these come in handy. All right, so you've cooked some food, now you need something to put it on. These plates are 50 cents each at Walmart, so I got 2 of them. The only reason I have 2 is, 1, sometimes I cook for other people. Very rarely do I need to provide a plate, because most of the time if I have other people that I'm providing for, they bring their own plates. But it's nice to have a plate to like set your ingredients on that you're going to use, and another one to set your food on. Maybe even use as a cutting board, but spoiler alert, we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, just having 2 plates I find is handy. That way you're not cross-contaminating raw and cooked food and all of that fun stuff. Plates, 50 cents each. Throw them in your cart, throw them in your box, and on to the next. So the next thing I keep in my kit is the G2 pot by Fire Maple. It has a canister and the stove inside this as well. I actually have a video on this setup, as well as the Saturn stove actually. So if you want to see more like detailed versions of the stoves or the equipment being used, check those videos out. But I use this to boil water. It comes in handy for coffee, backpacking meals, or I actually also use this setup for a risotto that I also got from Aldi's. It was just a risotto packet and a zip of sweet and spicy tuna, I think it was. And it was absolutely phenomenal. I thought it was gonna be really weird, but I wanted extra protein in it, and it tasted amazing. So this definitely allows you to simmer and boil quick. So it has those two ends, and it's really helpful. Spoiler again, like coffee a lot. So having this to help with that is its number one purpose, but there's that. So since I already spoiled it, we will go to coffee, and to do that, I use the AeroPress, fresh beans, whole beans, and the Fire Maple hand grinder. So I really like fresh ground coffee, and I find that it likes me a lot more. So when I'm camping especially, it just keeps my stomach a little better. I don't know if it's a mental thing or what it is, but get some whole beans, throw them in the grinder. It's extra fresh. It smells so good. The smell of fresh ground coffee is just literally unbeatable. Like, it's the best smell in the entire world. So having this and just keeping it in there, it's not doesn't take up a ton of space. If you're backpacking, maybe it's too much, but you're car camping, you got space in your bin, have some stuff, and yeah, have some good coffee, because if you start your day off with good coffee, you're gonna have a better day. So I also spoiled this a little bit. This next thing is something that I don't normally keep in here because this isn't mine. This is my buddy's. He left it at a trip, and I haven't seen him in months. So I have it in my bin, so it gets its use. But it's a little zip up of cutting board, a couple of knives, and some like wooden utensils. So it just keeps everything in here. This is super convenient. This is the GSI little like foldable kit. It's actually really solid. I haven't used his knives and stuff. I normally have my own, but knives are something I would recommend keeping in your kit. Whether it's like a chef's knife that just lets you do everything, or you have specific knives. If you have space and you like to have different knives, do that. I almost always just carry one big one and use that for everything. So is it proper? Probably not, but it's what I do and it works. So cutting board and all the fun stuff. This also has a little bit of soap and like a scrubber. Again, spoiler, this is basically a mini camp kitchen in itself, but yeah, I have this thing in my kit for now until he comes back to claim it. I talked about coffee, but I always keep some tea in there also. I find that I don't use this nearly as much as the people I camp with use it. Some different teas to cure some different things, so maybe a sore throat, or you can't sleep, or you want to wake up, all the different things. Keep a couple tea bags in there. It might not taste the greatest to some people, but it usually does its job pretty well. So I keep these in here just in case. My roommates really like tea, and a lot of my friends are also big tea people, so something that works for them or something that helps them and helps me, so keep these in there. The next thing I threw in is the little extendable fork things. I was surprised at how often I actually use these. I put them in here specifically for the savory s'mores, like charcuterie boards, but I use them way more often than I thought I would. You can use them for all different things. You could actually use them for full-size hot dogs if you really want, but having the little packable things, and they're pretty extendable, so it gives you all the range you need. And it's just pretty convenient to be able to have two of these and take up basically no space. So I keep these in there too. The next thing out of the box is a can opener. So I've had a lot of times where I've had to cut open a can because I don't have one of these. So I bought one of these specifically for my camp box because I was tired of stabbing through cans with a not very great knife. So for I think $7 or something, I grabbed one of these. It's really convenient. It also depends a lot on what exactly you are using. So maybe you're not using a bunch of canned goods when you're cooking, so you might not need this. But this is probably the most requested thing at a campground. I can't tell you how many times at around dinner time you hear people walking from campsite to campsite saying, "Hey, do you have a can opener by chance?" So now I always do. So I get to help out just a little bit. If you'd like to help out, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. It really does help the channel, and I really would appreciate it. And we got our last couple things here, so stick with me. If you've also found the videos good so far, I'd appreciate it if you like it. And yeah. Okay, the next couple things are the utensils. I have a little set of mini utensils that I bring all over the place. A mini whisk, a mini spatula, a mini spoon, and not so many fork and spoon. I like having full-size forks and spoons. I also have a titanium spork somewhere that I cannot find, but I really like the long handles. They help with like backpacking meals. You don't have to get your hand fully dirty. It's still not quite as good as a long-necked spork, but it does help a lot. So there's that. I also have a coffee scoop. I used to use this a lot more when I had ground coffee, but since I got the hand grinder, I usually don't use this or even bring it. It just kind of lives in the box, and I guess it lives there, so I do bring it, but I haven't gotten it out of the box and I don't know how long. Not necessary, but if you're using ground coffee, it'll definitely help. And then the next thing is a knife. So I keep this in my Jeep most of the time actually, but it also makes its way into my camp box. I don't use this for food. I just use it for cutting things open, or this is actually the knife that I usually end up using if I need to cut open a can. It actually does work really well. It is a solid blade knife, so I don't have to worry about breaking it. But it was relatively cheap, I do believe, and pretty solid quality. It has like the rope and everything, so you got extra safety stuff if you need it. Not something you really need, but especially in a camp box. I recommend this for camping in general, but maybe not in your camp kitchen. But it's in my box, so you get to see it. Okay, we got a couple things left. The next thing is fuel. So depending on what stove you use is going to be the fuel that you need, obviously. This is actually a gas blend. The Saturn X can work on both just propane or the blends. I like these more just because they're a lot more available, and I have them for all of my other stuff that I use camping wise. So get a couple of these. Always have more fuel than you think you're going to need, because you don't want to run out of fuel in middle of cooking and now your food is ruined, or you don't get to eat because you don't get to cook it to a safe temp. So have extra fuel, have a backup. Once you run out of your backup, or once you're to your backup, get your backup, a backup, and just keep that rolling. It's just a good safety thing to have, and it helps. So fuel. And then to end your night, you're going to need to clean. So I keep a little bottle of Dawn and a sponge. I know a lot of people who don't bring soap to camping trips and will just rinse it out and use that pot for the weekend and then take it home and clean it that way. But I personally, depending on what I'm cooking in there, like to just clean it out, wipe it out. It makes me feel a little better about it. For me, I don't really care most of the time, but if I'm cooking for other people especially, cleaning it before I use it for them makes me feel better. So I keep a little bottle of Dawn and a little sponge. Get to clean out my stuff and make it safer, I guess. That is actually everything I have in my box right now, but there are two main things that I did not mention that I usually keep in here, and that is paper towels. So I almost always have a roll of paper towels just in there. They're very helpful for cleaning and doing all of the things, but they are also really good to help start a fire if you are struggling with that. So paper towels, and the single most used utensil, in my opinion, or at least by me, is tongs. So I actually took them out of here to use them for my home cooking. I used them and forgot to put them back in here, but tongs are a great utensil to use for a lot of different things, and they can actually replace a lot of different things like spoons and spatulas and all the fun stuff. That way you don't have to get a bunch of stuff dirty. You can just use one thing for your one pot if that's what you're doing. But I do really like to minimize dishes and all that stuff, so just a little helpful hint. Use tongs, it can replace a lot of stuff. That's everything that I've got in the bin for now. If you found this helpful, again, I'd really appreciate it if you liked it. If I'm missing anything, or there's stuff in here that you don't think I need, or there's stuff not in here that you do think I need, let me know down in the comments. I would really appreciate it. I'm curious to see your thoughts. That's all I got for the video. Until next time, I appreciate you. Peace!